Okay, today we're speaking, we're in Siman Kuf Beis Lach Aleph. We're speaking about Davar Sheyesh and Matirin. So earlier, other times, we've spoken different kinds of foods that are not bottle, no matter what. They can't be bottled because there's something special about the food, or the food plays some special role in the food. Like, for example, a beria and a chaticha ruilas kapit. There's something special about the food that makes it not be bottle. Or way back when, we spoke about a davar maimed. With here, it's not the food itself, but it's what it does to the mixture. When it falls into this mixture, it has some kind of special effect, and because of that, that's why it can't be bottled. Today, we're talking about Davar Sheyesh Matirin, which is a very different kind of reason why it can't be bottled. That is to say, it's a food. It doesn't do anything special here, but what's unusual about this is that this food is. Good morning. This food is. I'm in the middle already. This food is. It's usher now. It'll be mutter tomorrow. So Chazal said that why you were eating it now when it's usher, and even it's betaruvas and it's really mutter. But why eat it now? Actually, had to wait for it to become mutter. Just as a little aside, this idea that says it will become mutter in the future. So the classic case, the case actually Shulchan Aruch brings, is about an egg that was laid on Yom Tiv that it's going to be mutter tomorrow, but it's lav dafka tomorrow. The Machaber in Halacha Beis talks about maybe you should say a din that by a certain eggs you have to wait 12 months to decide if they're mutter. Okay, it happens to be in that case it's not Davar Sheyesh Matirim. That was a possibility. The Magen Avram in Hilchas Chanukah of all places says that maybe the Chanukah candles are Davar Sheyesh Matirim because you could use them again next Chanukah. Okay, that's a whole year from now. So it doesn't mean tomorrow. It just means in the future it's going to become. There's a way to eat it beheter. So why eat it now in the mixture as it's where it's isser? There's isser in there. If you want to avoid isser, you should wait till tomorrow or the future. It'll be mutter also. Okay, so it's a drabanan. So you would think that since it's the whole idea of Davar Sheyesh Matirim is a drabanan, you think that by we would say sfek drabanan l'kula, but it's not true, of course. We don't say that. The Gemara says we don't say sfek drabanan l'kula for Davar Sheyesh Matirin, because the logic is the same. Why even eat sfek iser if you could tomorrow be for sure that you won't have it? Okay, so even it's
of course the Gemara first one that
I didn't say that. That's the back and forth. That's a conclusion of the Gemara. The Gemara comes out that it makes it's no matter what. Okay.
That's enough.
Okay. No, it's the Gemara. That's what the Gemara comes out. Okay. Now, and the truth is, the truth is the Shach says even if you have a sfek and it's a drabanan, it's still machmir. Okay. Even if it's an issa drabanan, we don't say sfek drabanan l'kula, and if it's a sfek drabanan and sfek Davar Sheyesh Matirin and issa drabanan also still make. Okay. Okay, so we'll see applications of all these examples. I'm just giving you some basics right now, just to get started before we get into deeper stuff. Between this time and next time, we'll hear some of the more specific examples. So I'm just giving you some just basic rules. Okay, so what I told you, you should eat it beheter. That's what Rashi says, and that's the reason why Chazal said that Davar Sheyesh Matirin is not bottled. The Ran gives I'm not convinced that he's arguing. The Ran is explaining to you how they structured the din. Okay, the din, the logic, the reason why Chazal answered it is because why eat it be'isser if you can eat it beheter? Wait a little bit of time and you'll be able to eat it. It'll be heter. The whole Tarus you'll know will be heter. But the Ran says like this. He says there's a sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that min b'mina is not bottle. No matter what, it can never be bottle. And we don't hold like that. The din is not like that. Min b'mina actually is more. It's easier to be bottle. So the Ran says the reason why. In theory, we would agree with Rabbi Yehuda. The reason why we don't agree with Rabbi Yehuda is because the fact that the Isser fell into Heter, that in itself it takes away from the Min B'mina, because they're both pieces of meat, but this meat is Isser and this meat is Hester, so that makes them a little bit not so Min B'mina. So that's why we wouldn't agree with Rabbi Yehuda. But in a case where it's going to become, the Chazal said, in a case where it's going to be Heter tomorrow, so then that concern of, well, this is Isser and that's Heter is not as strong. So then we can go back to the Rabbi Yehuda and say that it is considered Min B'mina and Min B'mina is not bottle. Okay, all that's a Drabanan. All the Drabanan way of looking at it. It's not the truth, of course. The fact that tomorrow's going to be Heter doesn't make it more Min B'mina or not, but that's a way of looking at it. That's how Chazal set up the din. And okay, so that's a nice way of setting it up, but it has a very big nafkamina to us. Big nafkamina, and that is that the din of min Davar Sheyesh Matirin is not batal is only when it's min b'minoi. Because the Ran's telling us the starting point here is it has to be we're trying to make a case where we would agree to Rabbi Yehuda. So we would agree to Rabbi Yehuda only in case it has to start off being mamish min b'minoi. When it starts off being physically min b'minoi, then we could have this thing that since it'll be heter tomorrow, so that makes it even more min b'minoi. So for example, if you have apples from Shemitah and you cook them with apples that are not from Shemitah. Okay, so then we will say that the apples from Shemitah is a Davar Sheyesh Matirin, because you could eat the apples with Kedusha Shvius. Why not? You could eat it. You don't have to eat it. You can eat apples. They're mutter. There's a way to eat them beheter. So then you have to eat the whole mixture. Okay, all the apples that are cooked here. You would say you have to eat them all with Kedusha Shvius because there's a way to eat it beheter. Okay, but had we cooked the apples with pears that from not from Shemitah, then we would say no. Now it's mimbish einaminoi. Mimbish einaminoi. There's no Davar Sheyesh Matirin is not have any special rules, and it could be batal like anything else. Okay. Now in that din that it has to be min b'minoi, we spoke about this once before. That this rule of min b'minoi, the way we describe or way we identify min b'minoi is different than in Siman Tzadiches. Usually, when we think about min b'minoi, it depends on what they taste like. When one thinks to be batal, we depend, does it taste the same or does it not taste the same? But for things like ours, like Davar Sheyesh Matirin, what depends on is are they have the same name? Okay, are they both called the same thing? So in my case, I told you apples and apples are both called the same thing. It doesn't depend on whether they have the same tam. It depends on whether they have the same name. Okay, it's a Gemara really, but the way the Shach is understanding that Gemara. Okay, one more thing before we get to our Chodosh examples. Okay, there's within this rule that it has to be min b'minoi, there's a machlokes about what to do about chametz on Erev Pesach, and that is to say, is chametz on Pesach is also b'marshu whether it's min b'minoi or min b'shein b'minoi. It doesn't depend on yesh matir. Chametz well before Pesach, like today, if chametz would fall into food, it for sure follows the regular rules of Bitul. The question is, what about on Erev Pesach? After the time when you're not allowed chametz for the rest of the day, where there's no din of Mashu doesn't start until Pesach. The Isser Mashu doesn't start until Pesach, but you're not allowed to eat chametz at that time. So, some Rishonim, the Rambam holds, that at that point chametz can't be batal because it's Davar Sheyesh Matirin. So, if it's min b'minoi, it can't be batal because it's Davar Sheyesh Matirin, because it'll become mutter. Wait a week from now, and the chametz won't be usher mitaraisa. There won't be isser deraisa of chametz. So wait for a week from now, and then you'll be when Pesach ends, you'll be allowed to eat this thing. So it's a Davar Sheyesh Matirin. So he holds. So according to Rambam, on Erev Pesach for those bunch of hours on Erev Pesach when chametz is usher, it's min b'minoi. It's not batal. Min b'shein b'minoi could be batal because it's a regular rule of Davar Sheyesh Matirin. But if it's min b'minoi, it can't be batal. Okay, the Ramah says not like that. The Ramah says not like that. He says. That the reason that it's not min b'minoi because in a year from now. Let me meet this person if I can. The reason is because in a year from now it's going to become usher again. So the way that's understood, so what? That in a year from now it's going to become usher again. It's going to be mutter in a week, but so it'll be usher in a year from now. So it's understood that as the way the Ran explains it. It takes away from it saying it's min b'minoi. This is not min b'minoi. It's not heter and heter because there's a lingering type of isser on this food also. So because we know 12 months from now it'll be usher again. So Memela, the Ramah says that it's not considered min b'minoi, which is how we paskin that it's on Erev Pesach it's bottle like regular rules of Bitul.
So they on Pesach also.
Because
something happened was this battle before Pesach.
Yeah.
Lach balach is not chayzer b'neiah.
Correct.
Why did it just Davar Sheyesh Matirin?
Because no, that's not a question. It was already bottled. It was bottled already.
But now,
no, but if we would say chayzer v'nir, then we'd have a problem. But we don't say chayzer v'nir, so it was bottled. So it's not allowed to eat it.
No, go for it. When was it chayzer v'nir? Davar Sheyesh Matirin.
Why should Davar Sheyesh Matirin should tell us to force us to say chayzer v'nir? Okay, I'm not sure if that makes that's like an extra step over here. You're saying it's okay. Okay, so there's I told you some of the basic rules and some of the simplest cases of Davar Sheyesh Matirin, and that was just a warm up. Because now I'm going to switch to one case of Chodosh, which is our big case of Davar Sheyesh Matirin, but for this time, and one case will be for next time. Okay, and but in that case, I'm going to bring you out a bunch of the other pratim about Davar Sheyesh Matirin, rather than tell you the pratim and then give you the example, and the other way around. Give you the example, and then that will help us give it the example, give it the different pratim within the din of Davar Sheyesh Matirim. So just give me 1 second, just to explain, just for whoever doesn't know, our radio audience, that any of the 5 grains, wheat, rye, spelt, oat, and barley, which take root after Pesach, take root after the first day of Chol Hamoed Pesach, those are considered Chodosh, they're new, and you're not allowed to eat them until it comes around the next year when the carbon omer is brought on the first day of Chol Hamoed Pesach. So at that point it becomes old. Now it's older. It's gone through 1 Pesach, and then it becomes mutter. Okay, we're not going to talk today, except one little part. We're not really going to talk today about whether that din is negayah to us in Chutz La'aretz and the grows Goyim's field. That's not relevant to us. So for today's discussion, we're working with an assumption that Chodosh is Asur and Yashan is mutter. Okay, whether that's L'maisa, that's not relevant today. We're going to talk about one prat of it, but not the overall shayla. We're going to ignore. Okay, the Gemara says that Chodosh is Davar Sheyesh Matirin. Okay, it's one of the cases the Gemara brings of Davar Sheyesh Matirin, because today you're not allowed to eat it. If something was planted today, then you're not allowed to eat it, but it's going to be mutter come a few months from now. Come Chol Hamoed Pesach, the first day of Chol Hamoed Pesach, you're going to be allowed to eat it. So it's a Davar Sheyesh Matirin, and it becomes mutter after this many months, and that's mutter. Okay, just a twist on that. I told you beforehand that if it'll be Chayzel Isuroi, then that's not the Davar Sheyesh Matirin. That's not relevant over here. You'll hear why it's obvious. It's not relevant over here, even though next year Chodosh is going to be Asur again. But this thing that I have in my hand is not going to become Asur. Other Chodosh will become Asur. Okay, so so today we're going to talk about what the one part of that shaila, one of the L'maisa parts for that shaila is like this, and that is about Chodosh malt. Okay, what's malt? Barley is one of these 5 grains. It has to be Yashan. And barley has this really unusual property. Many grains have this property, but the barley is the one that people use. It has a special property, which is that you could turn it into malt. What does that mean? Barley is really a seed that could grow into a plant. That's what it is. It's really meant to grow into a plant. So the Davar Sheyesh built it that basically this whole seed is starch. That's the bulk of this thing, and it's food for the plant to live on until it could start functioning by itself, until it has roots and leaves, till it could function by itself. So the starch is there as the food to keep the germ growing for the first couple of days until it's ready to grow on its own. Okay, so what happens is when you put the barley into an environment that it says, the seed into an environment that says, okay, it's good to grow now. Now it's a good environment. It's warm, it's moist, whatever it is that tells it it's time to grow. It starts growing. Okay, and it uses that starch to grow. Okay, but it can't digest starch just like we can. We can't function. If you put starch into your blood, you won't get any nutrition out of it. Okay, you can't function with starch. What happens is that starch is really lots and lots of molecules of glucose strung together. And again, if you put that into your blood, you get nothing out of it. But you have to break it down into individual sugars. And when you break it down into individual sugars, that your body could use to make energy out of it. So what happens is, when you put the barley into a condition that says, okay, it's ready to grow, the barley releases an enzyme. It's called barley beta amylase. That's a fancy name. It releases an enzyme. The enzyme breaks down the starch that's in its seed, breaks down that starch into sugars. Okay, and then now it could grow. Now it could use that to help itself grow, and it starts to grow and grows for the first few days until it has leaves and it'll grow into a plant. Okay, that's all how it works out when you put barley into the ground. But what people do is they want the sweet, that sugary, the starch turned into sugar. That's what they want. They want to eat that. They want to use that because it has this very unusual taste. It's sweet and it has a special flavor to it. So what they do is they put the barley into a moist environment. We give it air and water and the right temperature, and it starts to grow. It germinates. Okay, it does the process that I just described to you. And then they freeze the process. They don't want it to grow. It actually starts to grow little stems or roots. What? Rootlets. It's little amounts it's as if starting to grow. And at that point, it's done. It's already it's converting the starch into sugars, and then they use it as is. Okay, and that sugar is called malt or malted barley. It's all the same thing. Okay, that's what they use. There are other people who want the enzyme, and they start this process and grab the enzyme because that enzyme also has value. But for our purposes, people use this. They want that sugar that's in there. Okay, now very small amounts of malt are added to we know of people using malt aside from beer. I see keeps here. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that case, but that's not relevant to us. We're talking about Bitul. So beer is all malt. Or could we say that? But we want two cases we use it with Bitul, and that is they use when they make flour, they put small amounts of malt into it for enrichment. It gives it protein, and I don't know what else it adds to it. Okay, they add that in very tiny amounts, and they also add it into foods. Like cornflakes and Rice Krispies have it in them, and pretzels. They add it into it because it adds sweetness and it adds this character to the food. Okay, so the malt that's planted after Pesach comes to market. The barley that's planted after Pesach comes to market like months and months later, like December, January, February, March, like way later. And the question is, if I have it in my cereal or have it in my flour, is it bottled or not? Okay.
Well, why does it come later than regular barley? Because you have to process it.
Because of the processing. I'm trying to get a handle still on when it comes to the market. I don't yet know the real answer to that question.
Presumption is in January, I think, according to the fellows guy.
Right, but
because of the processing. It takes time.
Well, the processing itself takes about a week to malt barley, but they let the barley dry out and rest beforehand. That has something to do with it. But when I spoke to somebody like a week or two ago, and they told a company who does this, and they said, well, sometimes it doesn't happen until deep into the spring. They wait till they get rid of their old stuff first. They're using their old stuff first. Okay, I'm going to mention that later.
Why have powder form or liquid?
Either one. Goes both ways.
What
makes a difference?
I'm scared.
No, use either way.
Kashrus is using.
Either way, it could be liquid or powder.
Does he use shkacha if it's spray dried?
I don't remember. Okay, that's not for today. It beats me. Okay, so the first thing is like this. Let's think about whether it should be bottled or not. Okay, so the one reason is I think I'm going to have three reasons. Maybe it's four possible reasons why it would bottle. It's a Davar Sheyesh Matirin. So the question is, if it's Davar Sheyesh Matirin, it can't be bottled. That's our question. Is it not bottled because it's Davar Sheyesh Matirin? What do you say? I'm coming to that. Baruch Hashem. I'm coming to that, David. You're always at least two steps ahead of me.
That's Tom.
I'm coming. Just give me a second, okay? Okay. So one is like this. One is like this. The one reason to think that it should not be Davar Sheyesh Matirin is because I just described to you how you make it. Okay, but when you make it, it becomes chametz. Okay, it's sitting in water for a long time. It starts to germinate literally, and that's a sign of chametz. But obviously, it sits in water for a long time. So that means it's not Davar Sheyesh Matirin because it doesn't become Yashan until Chol Moed Pesach. Well, before Chol Moed Pesach comes Erev Pesach when I have to get rid of it. Okay, so it's not Davar Sheyesh Matirin. It's not Davar Sheyesh Matirin because I'll never get to the point that I'm going to be allowed to eat it. Because before I'm allowed to eat it, it's going to become also for me to eat it. Okay,
so
which
is only when it's grain.
So right when the Gemara says that Chodosh is Davar Sheyesh Matirin is talking about the grains, the actual wheat or barley or whatever it is. Okay,
and it'll stay good in those days.
Will it stay
good for 8 months?
Does grain stay for a long time? Yeah, grains, except for oats. If you dry them out, stay for years and years. So oats is special, but besides oats, they stay forever and ever. They last, I don't know, ever, but they last for a long time. They're dried out and kept well. They last for a long time. What I just told you is like the Shulchan says a case. It's Malachah Daled. He says, is what happens if you have a food that's a Davar Sheyesh Matirin, but it's going to physically spoil before comes the time when it becomes mutter. That's not Davar Sheyesh Matirin, because Davar Sheyesh Matirin means don't eat it now, wait till then. But by then I'm not going to be able to eat it because it'll have spoiled. Okay, in our case it won't have spoiled, but it'll have become chametz. So to become chametz, you say that's not Davar Sheyesh Matirin because it's going to become chametz. Okay, so that what I just said to you is accurate. It's true, but only in a theoretical sense. Okay, because the Shulchan says we're going to talk about this next time more. But Shulchan says that when Davar Sheyesh Matirin doesn't only have to be when a thing happens automatically, like a passing of time makes it Davar Sheyesh Matirin. There are things that are considered Davar Sheyesh Matirin where it takes some action on my part to make it happen. I have to do something, like the Gemara says, tevel is Davar Sheyesh Matirin because you can be mafresh truma. You can be mafresh to truma. Okay, it doesn't happen automatically. If you leave the tevel, it's never going to turn into chulin by itself, but you could do this action, which is you do the hafrasha, that makes it Davar Sheyesh Matirin. Okay, we'll talk about that idea in the next time, in a bunch of times when we get to that. But there's such a concept doesn't have to be with time. So maybe we should say that the malt is not Davar Sheyesh Matirin because you have an eitzah, you could just sell it to a guy. Okay, I told you, but before the day that it becomes mutter, before Chol Moed comes, I'll have to get rid of it. No, I don't. I can tell to a guy. So that idea, I didn't make that up. Probably can speak about it. Maybe think that a chametz should that should not stop it from being Davar Sheyesh because you could sell it. And the Chayadim says, he says, no, he says that's not true. It's not accurate. He says because he has two reasons. He says first of all is when we say that you could sell to a guy, he says that's not a simple thing. One of the rules of things that could happen when you don't happen automatically is that it has to be something relatively easy to do. He says that's a whole pachka to sell to the guy. He says, and the second reason is he says the whole you should eat a beheter is you're going to get to eat it. To tell me I have to sell it, I'm not going to get to eat it. So I want to eat this thing. So it doesn't help me to say sell to the guy.
Selling chametz not matter. It's just as usher. Whatever it is, it's just as
no. When I sell it to the guy, it's not usher. No, I sell it to the guy, it's not usher. It won't be chametz. I won't have to get rid of it before.
The first one I said,
it's chametz. It's not by your. It's a chil of chametz. It's just as usher.
If I sell it to the guy, then there's no but I will be able to eat it. I'm going to be able to eat it. I'll be able to eat it because it won't be there won't be an issue to it. So, but both of those reasons.
The Shem Bitzer is there.
Okay,
I wonder if 600 years ago, before they didn't chametz, anybody would even ask this question.
So the answer is no. I think the opposite. No.
The Shem Bitzer is on the chametz. There's the Shem Bitzer. There's the Shem Bitzer.
Okay, I think that it's both of those reasons don't apply to us. Okay, and that's because for us, selling things to a guy doesn't involve any big deal at all. I mean, most people are selling chametz anyhow. So just put down one more thing, put down my malted barley, big deal. Let's take one more second to hit something on. And the idea that I'm not going to get to eat it is not true either. Because the way we use our mechiras chametz, I know I'm getting it back after Pesach. So he says, if you sell it to the guy, you won't be able to eat it. Yeah, we all know you're going to be able to eat it because we all know that in a week from now, when Pesach is over, it's going to come right back to you. So I'm not convinced that those reasons are true. What do you say?
I'm not convinced Kashrus starts.
Okay, so then Rosh Hashanah came from a different angle, a completely different angle. He said, not different angle. He says, even if you would say that because it's chametz, not Davar Sheyesh Matirim, he says that's only true if a yid has it. If I have malted barley and it falls into something, you say maybe it's not Davar Sheyesh Matirim because it's going to become asur when Pesach comes. He says, but usually the shayla that we think about is a company has it. The company had put malted barley into their flour. Is it butter or is it not butter? We're not thinking about a yid who owns malted barley that fell into his chicken soup. We're talking about malted barley that's in flour by the guy. By the guy, it's not going to become asur. It's not going to become asur on Erev Pesach for him. Nothing's going to change by him. So it is mutter. Wait till Chol Moed Pesach and come the first day Chol Moed Pesach, the Chodosh will fall off and it'll be completely mutter. He says, so there's no...
I bought cereal, right? Right now, let's say the cereal is Kashrus, the malted barley, whatever it is, right? Right now, it's in my hands. So what can I... Right now, it shouldn't be bought.
So you're correct. If you have this, you have the box of cereal. You have the box of cereal. So you say maybe it shouldn't be bought because Davar Sheyesh Matirim.
Well, that's all China.
No. Okay, so maybe I'm not being clear. Okay, I'm not clear. So you're right. When it's in your hands is one thing, but the hashgacha people think about it. Could we give hashgacha on it, or is it bottle? If I want to buy it in the store,
that's right. So people are going to buy it.
No, okay. No, let me take it back. You want to go into the store and buy a box of cornflakes. Yeah. You want to buy this box of cereal. So is the isser in the bottle or is it not bottle? Right. So the answer is right now the isser is not bottle in there. It's not bottle in there because the guy who owns it right now, in Mariano's who owns it right now, Mariano's who owns it right now, by him it's a Davar Sheyesh Matirim. It can't be bottle because come the first day Pesach, the first day Chol Moed, it's going to be mutter. And he had him.
Now that I bought it, what's going to happen now?
So you're right. So now you're right. So when I buy it, now it switches. You're saying now it switches. Okay, that's a fair way of looking at it. So you're saying I'll buy it, and then once I buy it, then I'm allowed to keep it. Okay. Okay. Let's now move to a second reason. Okay. So the second thing is like this. I told you two questions. One is malted barley in flour, and one is malted barley in cereal. Okay, so I think that the one of those questions is a silly question, and that's because malted barley and like cereal and things like that is for sure not bottle because it's not even bottle b'shishim. Okay, it's there for sweetness, and if you look at the ingredient panel, you'll see some places who write out less than 2% of. Well, the barley is the malt is before that. Okay, because it's more than 2-3. It's a couple of percent. Okay, it's there to give sweetness. Things that give sweetness are not put in at tiny amounts that you can't taste. That are bottle b'shishim. That you think bottle b'shishim means you're not going to taste it. If it's here for sweetness,
yeah, but they had sugar and corn syrup with the garment.
Is it?
Two things. Is it bottle b'shishim?
It's not bottle b'shishim. No, it's not bottle b'shishim. It's not physically. It's not physically bottle b'shishim. It's more than the percent that would be bottle b'shishim. Okay, so we don't have to think about that. So, okay, now, but for malt in flour, the malt that they put into flour is very different. Okay, it's put in like in the area. I don't know. In one of the places I heard about it, it's 0.2%. That's 500 to
Why
1.
did they put it in there for?
Why do they put it into there? It's for protein and I don't remember other enrichments for it. It's not there for taste. It's put in at 0.2%. 0.2%, which is 500 to 1. Okay, so when we say something's not bought the Aleph, that's an example of it. Here is 500 times. So there we have the question. So then you say, okay, wait a second. But I told you, this is what David said before. I told you that Davar Sheyesh Matirim is only not bottle if it's min b'minoi. If it's min b'minoi, and for min b'minoi, we follow. It goes basar shma. It depends on what the name is. Well, malted barley, wheat flour are not the same thing. They don't have the same shame. So then it's not a case of Davar Sheyesh Matirim because Davar Sheyesh Matirim needs to be the same shame. So it's not. Malted barley and wheat flour are not the same thing. So that's an angle to say is let it be bottled. It could be bottled because it's not min b'minoi, and Davar Sheyesh Matirim needs to be min b'minoi to not be bottled. Okay, but that brings us to another wrinkle, and that is like this. Excuse me. The Gemara says, the Gemara in Beitza says that when we're talking about halachas of tchum, the Gemara says that water, salt, and spices added to a food are not bottled into a dough because it's Davar Sheyesh Matirim. He says, Davar Sheyesh Matirim, what are you talking about? Davar Sheyesh Matirim has to be min b'minoi. How is salt min b'minoi in a dough that you made bread out of? Okay, so he says, what's going on here? So it's not min b'minoi. That's our rule. We know. I told you this rule that has to be min b'minoi. That's not a Gemara, but that's a rule that we know that has to be min b'minoi. So Tais says two answers. One answer is it's a special chumrah for tchumen. Special a special chumrah for tchumen to consider this min b'minoi, because what happens is when you make okay, one is that it's a special chumrah for tchumen. That's one answer. The second answer is that this that we say something is min b'she'ein minoi. Sorry, that when something is used as an ingredient to make a food out of it, that now after we add the salt and the spices and the water, it becomes one big conglomerate. That it's automatically min b'minoi. Something that's part of making the food is automatically min b'minoi. Okay, it's not a rule special for tchumen. It happens to be the Gemara said in the case of a tchum, but it has nothing to do with it. That's a general. The min b'minoi, when I said it has the same shame. If it becomes a one unit together, that's automatically min b'minoi. Okay, so again, but this is a special kind of min b'minoi that it has to do with the name of the food. Usually min b'minoi has to do with the taste of the food. So whether it's part of the food or not makes no difference. We just think about what it tastes like. In case things have not, by the rules of Bitul B'Shishim, we go basar shema. Does it have the same name?
You were explaining why that's such a rule?
Why what?
Why it's only by
min b'minoi? Yeah, you missed it. I'll take it later. Okay. So the Taz, I'll tell you afterwards. The Taz and the Shach go like Tais is the second answer. They say that it's automatic, that if we make it as part of the food, it belongs there, it's functional, then it's min b'minoi. So in which case, the malt is min b'minoi. Because the malt is in there, it's part of making the food, the flour work better.
Dough it becomes one entity, it becomes inchepted. You can't make dough without, you can make it without malt.
You can make food without spices also. Just you chose, for you it's better to make with spices. You buy your flour, that's how they make it.
Spices with the water and the flour over there.
The Gemara says water, salt, and spices. The Gemara's examples.
That's simple.
So you're right. Water you need for making it, but you don't need salt and spices. It's just how you decide to make it. You know what I mean? So according to them, it is min b'minoi. But the Magen Avram, from the Orach Chaim side of it, says like the first answer of Tais is a special din for tchumen. So according to Magen Avram, you're good because according to Magen Avram, it's a special rule for tchumen. But otherwise, you follow the regular rules. In which case, it's min b'she'ein minoi, and min b'she'ein minoi. There's no problem. There's no problem of Chodosh being of Davar Sheyesh Matirim when it's min b'she'ein minoi. Okay, now, sorry, one more thing. One more thing. And that's like this. The Ramah says in, way down where, in Halach, when he talks about Chodosh, really, he says, if you're not sure if a food is Chodosh or Yashan, he says you can eat it because of the sfek. What's a sfekah? Maybe this grain grew from the previous year. It was like way back when. And even if it's from this year, maybe it was planted before Pesach. Right? The rule is it depends on whether it took root before or after Pesach. And so maybe it took root before Pesach. Okay. So just as an aside, the Shach says, what are you talking about? What happened to the rule that has to be, you can't have a sfek m'shem echad? That's a famous question. Shach is, m'shem echad, they're both the same thing, which is, are they before Pesach or not before Pesach? So the Chavaz says, just as an aside, not relevant to us really, the Chavaz says that rule that something has to be m'shem echad is, doesn't apply when it's things that are natural occurring items. Sfek, that we only say that rule when we have two terim like based on halachas. Maybe we passing like this, maybe passing like that. But when it's something that did this happen or did this happen, did different possible things that happen just on their own. His words are davar hahoyve v'rogakach ve'ena b'mikra mezamin. Something that it happened. It's just the way it is. Things are planted before Pesach and things that grow from last year. Also, he says then there's also wrong. They're not relevant to us. I just threw it in. Okay.
What is that?
On the Shach in close sfekah, it's Yirav. The Chavaz is on the Shach. The Shach is not in halachas of Yashan. It's in close sfekah. Rabbi Krieger, yes, correct. Okay, so that's what Rabbah says is sfekah. Why if you're not sure something is Chodosh, you could eat it. Okay, so there's people who are very apprehensive about relying on this sfekah for regular wheat products. And that's because we have very little stays from year to year. But not only does little stay from year to year, but the producers are very in touch with when the new grain comes in, because when you use spring wheat, which is what's used for like breads and things like that, the protein level is very important. So when they switch over from one year's produce to the next year's, the protein level changes, and commercial operations know what happened. They know, we switched over because we adjust our recipes. It's a whole ASIC at a commercial bakery to know when we switched over from last year's grain to this year's grain. So is it really a sfek? Come October, okay, come December. Is it really a sfek that maybe it's from last year's? Again, we hold very little grain from one year to the next. And also you could find out, you could poke around and find out whether it is or not. Okay, so it's a question whether that is or not. It seemed to me that for the barley, we were on better footing to have this sfek, and that's because the barley, as I said to you beforehand, it lasts for a really long time. And one of the producers told me, he says, we could be all the way into the spring before we start using the old stuff. It doesn't matter how long it lasts. He said it depends on business, how long it lasts for. And it makes no difference this year's versus next year. So no one has any idea whether they're getting old or new barley. It doesn't mean anything. It's just barley is barley. Whatever. I'm sure there's classes and rules of what kind of malt you get, but give or take, it's all the same stuff. So there isn't this big line that says we got last year's and this year. So maybe the sfekah has more standing when we come to shilas of malt of the malt. Now, as sort of related to this is the Shach says. He says, I don't understand. This Shach is in Kufyud. He says, I don't understand why is Ramah saying that you could be somech on sfekah to allow you to eat Chodosh, to eat something that you're not sure if it's Chodosh. The Ramah says that if you have a Davar Sheyesh Matirin, you can't be somech on sfekah. So in Hilchas, in our halachas, he says you can't be somech on sfekah for Davar Sheyesh Matirin. Well, now we turn to the halachas of Chodosh, which is Davar Sheyesh Matirin, and the Ramah says you can be samech on that. So what's going on? So make up your mind. Why is the sfekah mutter? A few hundred pages later in Shulchan Aruch, when over here in our halachas he says Davar Sheyesh Matirin doesn't have that heter. So one thing he says is the Shach says the Ramah says you shouldn't be samech on a sfekah for Davar Sheyesh Matirin unless it's a tzorech. So the Shach says, it's for sure it's a tzarech. I mean, we need food. We have nothing to eat. You know what I mean? If you tell us we can't eat food that we don't know if it's yashan, then that's already a tzarech. It's okay. Maybe the Ramah just figured that it's a big tzarech and that's why he was makel over there. That's one thing. But he says, I have a better answer. And he says there's different kinds of sfekah. This comes from a Rosh. Okay, the Rosh says like this. He says there's different kinds of sfekah. Some sfekahs are, I know there was Isser, but now I have a sfekah. Did that Isser end up in what I have? Wherever it's been moving around, and however we created sfekahs, I'm not sure if that Isser ended up in what I have. He says that's the case when the Ramah says we should not be samech on sfekah. But if the sfekah is maybe there's no Isser altogether, in that case, the other Ramah would allow you to be samech on a sfekah for even for Davar Sheyesh and Matirim, and that's the case over here. Saying it's from planting before Pesach, or saying it was from previous year, means there was no Isser here altogether. There was never this thing that I have in my hand doesn't have any Chodosh at all. So the Shach says that he thinks that's the better answer, and that's the case when you can be Samach on it. We're going to come back to the Shach Amir Hashem for next time also, because that's the end for malt. Next time that we talk about this, we're going to do about how you make Yashan flour and Yashan barley and deal with the Davar Sheyesh Matirim shilos that come up for that.